Not every decision that changes a franchise is born in noise. Some are born in silence, behind the scenes, away from headlines, away from heated debates, away from the spotlight of the fan base. And that's exactly what's happening right now in Philadelphia. While everyone is looking at the offense, at trades, at rumors, and at big media names, the Eagles are moving in another direction. A much more strategic direction, a much deeper one, and potentially a much more decisive one for the future of the team. The question is simple, but heavy. Who are the real priorities for the Philadelphia Eagles this offseason? Because the franchise is living through an extremely delicate moment. The team won 11 games in 2025, captured the NFC East for the second straight season, but all of that was quickly erased by an early and painful playoff elimination at home in the wild card round against a San Francisco 49ers team that was heavily injured. A loss that left marks. Marks on the roster, on the coaching staff, on the fan base, and most importantly, on the way the future started to be discussed inside the organization. Since then, the Eagles have entered a period of silent restructuring. Kevin Patullo was fired. The search for a new offensive coordinator remains unresolved. Rumors involving A.J. Brown have dominated headlines. Howie Roseman's name is once again at the center of the toughest decisions. And while all of these topics occupy the spotlight, another issue is quietly growing behind the scenes. Less flashy, less controversial, but extremely important. The financial situation of the franchise. According to salary cap projections, the Eagles enter the offseason with just over $10 million in cap space. That number can obviously change through restructures, cuts, and strategic moves. But the reality is clear. There is no financial breathing room. Every decision matters. Every contract weighs something. Every renewal has to be calculated with surgical precision. And there is no shortage of decisions to make. Jalen Carter, for example, becomes eligible for a contract extension. A young, dominant defensive pillar who will naturally move into the franchise's priority list. At the same time, the offense is going through system changes, identity shifts, and structural uncertainty. And all of that is happening alongside free agency, where important players can simply walk away without a clear replacement already in place on the roster. It's within this context that one specific name starts to gain real weight inside the organization: Jaylen Phillips. He may not be the most talked about name among fans, he may not be the most media-driven player on the roster, but inside the structure of the Eagles, he represents something far more valuable than raw numbers. He represents a rare fit. According to behind-the-scenes reporting from journalists close to the franchise, Phillips has started to be viewed as a real priority in free agency. Not just as an interesting target, but as a player the Eagles truly do not want to lose. And that doesn't happen by accident. Phillips brings a profile that simply does not exist in abundance on the current roster. While other edge rushers on the team rely more on speed, quickness, and explosiveness, he offers physical power, strength at the edge, and the ability to collapse the pocket with direct force. He changes how opposing offensive lines have to organize. He alters protections. He forces adjustments. He creates mistakes. That type of player is not easy to replace. If Phillips leaves, the Eagles don't just lose a player, they lose a specific structural piece of their defense. And that becomes even more relevant when you look at Vic Fangio's defensive system. Phillips fits this scheme almost perfectly. Discipline, gap control, constant pressure, physical impact, and tactical responsibility. He isn't just productive, he's functional inside the system. There's also an emotional factor that matters more than many people realize. Phillips has publicly said that being traded to the Eagles was the best day of his life. His connection to the franchise, to the locker room, and to the culture isn't just professional, it's personal, and that matters. The Eagles also didn't acquire him cheaply. There was investment, there was cost, there was planning. That creates an internal logic of continuity. This isn't simply, let him go and replace him later. There is real football and symbolic capital attached to him. The problem is that if Phillips truly reaches the open market, the competition will be heavy. Very few edge rushers available in free agency offer his combination of age, production, and system fit. He's young, proven, physically built for the role, and aligned with modern defensive schemes. That naturally inflates market value. Projections already point toward contracts exceeding $50 million over 3 years. And that's where the central dilemma appears. The Eagles have to choose where to invest. keeping offensive stars, extending defensive pillars, preparing future contract extensions, fixing the coaching staff, reshaping parts of the roster, all under a limited salary cap. In that environment, setting priorities is not a luxury. It's strategic survival. That's why the word priority being attached to Jaylen Phillips completely changes how this offseason should be read. It shows that behind the headlines, rumors, and loud speculation, the Eagles are already operating with an internal decision map. They are already separating who is essential from who is movable, who is structural from who is replaceable, who belongs to the long-term project and who may become a market asset. And Phillips is clearly on the right side of that equation. More than sacks, tackles, or statistics, he represents defensive balance. He represents system continuity. He represents stability in an offseason that is already unstable. That explains the quiet urgency. The longer they wait, the higher the market value rises. The closer free agency gets, the more teams enter the bidding. The more competitors appear, the harder it becomes to retain the player without inflating the contract. So if the Eagles truly see him as a priority, the logic is simple. Act fast. Not out of emotion, not because of public pressure, but because of market mathematics. Waiting is expensive. And that leads to the most important point of this entire situation. The Eagles are making it clear, even without saying it directly, that this offseason will not be only about the offense, an offensive coordinator, or headline-grabbing trades. It will be about identity, about how this team wants to win, about what kind of defense it wants to sustain, about what kind of structure it wants to protect, about which players form the backbone of the franchise. Keeping Jaylen Phillips is not just a contract renewal, it's a philosophical statement. It's saying that the defense remains a central pillar of the project, that the balance between physical power, tactical discipline, and constant pressure remains a priority, that the identity built over recent years will not be dismantled piece by piece. And maybe most importantly, it's a reminder that not every franchise-changing decision needs to be loud to be transformative. Some decisions change the direction of a franchise without explosive headlines, without trending topics, without controversy, without chaos, but with deep, long-term impact. And that is exactly the kind of move the Philadelphia Eagles are stepping into right now. While everyone looks at the offense, the Eagles are securing the foundation. And more often than not, championships are built there, not in the noise, but in the structure.